video is for senior high history. We're looking at the highlights from pages 416 to 423. So starting on page 416, highlight Fidel Castro. You'll want to know his name. And he became the communist dictator of Cuba. On page 417, under Cuban incited revolutions, near the bottom of the second column, find the bold term Sandinistas and highlight that they were communist revolutionaries. So Cuba kind of began the sweep of communism through Central America and in South America. Very unfortunate thing. And they kind of used Cuba as a base. Cuban communist revolutionaries kind of spread out from there. And Cuban aid in Nicaragua brought about the existence of the Sandinistas. And there were about 5,000 Cubans in Nicaragua helping the Sandinistas accomplish their communist overthrow. Turning to page 418, under Argentina, highlight Juan Perón. You want to know that he became the president of Argentina. And then highlight Isabel Perón. This was the third wife of President Perón. After her husband died, highlight that she became the first woman to head a government in the Western Hemisphere. Unfortunately, she was not a very good president, and she was deposed in 1976, and political violence continued. Under Chile, find Salvador Allende, highlight his name. And a little bit further down, highlight that Allende was decidedly pro-Soviet. He established diplomatic relations with both Cuba and Communist China. And all of these communist takeovers, it just brought about cycle after cycle of bloodshed, revolution, and instability in South and Central America. And still today, most of those countries are extremely unstable. The people live in poverty, very backwards. Most of them are third world countries, and it's just a tragedy. On page 419, looking at Asia and Africa, so under conflicts over Israel, find the date May 14th, 1948. Highlight May 14th, 1948, the Jews proclaimed the independent state of Israel. For the first time in thousands of years, Israel was now finally its own country again. Top of the next column, highlight this guy's name, Chaim Weizmann, and highlight that he became the first president of Israel. Highlight also David Ben-Gurion, and highlight that he was Israel's first prime minister. Weizmann had been extremely influential in the territory of Palestine, and very influential in bringing about the founding of the new state of Israel. So he was kind of a natural choice there. Pretty smart guy. He was also a chemist and a good first leader there. I'll let you read about the 6-Day War and the Yom Kippur War. Both of them extremely fascinating, and to me just clearly showing how God was in control of the Israelites, even though most of them don't necessarily believe the way that they used to, or believe in the Messiah and all that. God still blesses his people, and God never breaks his promises. He promised Abraham that he would prosper his people and that he would bless them, and he's never really fully taken that blessing off. He's never broken that promise. So you can read about that those two wars there, and just the way that this tiny little country was able to fight back against all of the Arab countries that were opposing them is just pretty incredible. So turning to page 420, under the Camp David Accords. Highlight this guy's name, Menachem Begin. He was the Israeli Prime Minister. And highlight Anwar el-Sadat. He was the Egyptian president. Highlight that they met with U.S. President Jimmy Carter at Camp David. And then highlight Camp David Accords and highlight that Israel agreed to withdraw completely from the Sinai Peninsula. And this was all very significant because it was the first time in over 2,000 years that Jews and Arabs actually sat down together and negotiated a peace treaty. So if you look at our map there, those are the Israeli gains in the Six-Day War. So the purple shows the territory held by Israel at its founding in 1948. The yellow is the territory gained by Israel in the Six-Day War. So not only did they take all of that, they took it in 6 days. And you can see just how much they expanded their territory there. The Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank are still hotspots today and very, very much fought over between the Palestinians and the Israelites. So it was a little bit unfair that Israel was forced to hand over what they had rightfully conquered when they were attacked first, especially in that war. But this did improve Israeli-Egyptian relations. But of course, Israeli relations with the rest of the Arab League is extremely tenuous. Most of them today still refuse to recognize Israel's independence and sovereignty, especially nations like Iran. They're constantly threatening to send missiles to Israel. Some of them even have sent missiles to Israel. Thankfully, again, God is still protecting his people, and Israel has an extremely strong military and technology that allows them to defend themselves. Under Lebanon and the PLO, highlight the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, and highlight this guy's name, Yasser Arafat, and know that he founded the PLO. And basically their entire mission is to establish a Palestinian state in Israel. They want to destroy Israel and reestablish it for the Palestinians. So they've caused civil war, bloodshed, they kill without compunction. Men, women, children, doesn't really matter to them. On page 421, we're under Iran and Iraq here. So Iran's leader, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, or just called the Shah, was an ally of the United States since the post-World War II period. And he was very anti-communist. Under him, Iran had many advancements. Women could attend college, they could drive cars, they could wear Western clothing, they didn't have to cover their heads. But highlight that in 1979, the Shah was overthrown by a combined force of communist terrorists and Muslim radicals. Although the Shah was a friend of the United States, the Carter administration refused to come to his aid. This is also the time when American hostages, were taken from the embassy, and they were not released until 1981 after the election of President Reagan. Let's see. No more highlights on this page. Turn to page 422. Under turmoil in Africa, find Ghana. Highlight that Ghana became the first African nation south of the Sahara to gain independence. On the second column, near the bottom of that column, find the bold term Zaire. Looks like Zaire. It's actually pronounced Zaire. Highlight just above that, the Republic of the Congo in 1971 was renamed Zaire. And then on page 423, find the bold name, Haile Selassie I. Highlight his name. Just below that, highlight his name again, Haile Selassie. Highlight that he was overthrown by a military coup in 1974. And this brought about a lot of bloodshed. Hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians starved to death in the early 1970s as a result of famine. was all brought about by Marxist or communist economic manipulation. By the end of the decade, the government was maintaining its power only through the aid of Soviet advisors and a large force of Cuban troops. So bloodshed, loss of lives, and just turmoil in the country, and sadly the overthrow of a family that had ruled Abyssinia for thousands and thousands of years, or Ethiopia. Next, under South Africa, find the bold term apartheid. Highlight this was a policy of racial segregation. And then last, highlight the African National Congress, or ANC. And know that this held a lot of sway in South Africa. So that's the last of the highlights for today. Make sure that you complete all of your reading thoroughly, answer your homework questions, and let me know if you have any questions for yourself.